Hey there Rangers, I'm Kato Genesis, and as promised, after completing Wasteland 3, I now have some more tips to share with you about the game. Since this will serve as a part 2, part 1, which contains 17 tips, can be found right here, and is linked below. So let's get into this many more tips I wish I knew when I started playing Wasteland 3. I, like many of you, I'm sure, take pride in creating a character from the ground up, and in Wasteland 3 you create a duo from the ground up if you want to, or have the option of taking a pre-made duo. I thought there was going to be a lot more interaction with them and the world, but that's not really the case. They do have banter that seldom happens and is specific to those characters, but not exactly to the level we would all hope. However, what I did learn is they still have a super awesome secret benefit, and that is their one-of-a-kind utility items. Some of the pre-made duo characters have crazy powerful trinkets on them. I chose Bronco and Kickboy, and Bronco's necklace gives a 10% critical chance bonus, and that can only really be compared to the Rabbit's Foot utility, which only gives a 3% critical chance bonus. Not all of the pre-made characters' utility items are this powerful, but I felt it worth mentioning nonetheless. 10% bonus critical chance out the gate is a lot. I didn't take too much time learning about crouching evasion versus cover evasion and the benefits of either of these things, but it is important to go over, especially in the case of cover because it doesn't seem to tell you in the tutorial about your evasion chances, which should have been there. So here's some crunchy numbers for you. If you have 2 AP to spare and you're out in the open, crouching is more effective than defending because you'll gain an accuracy bonus with the same evasion bonus. But when it comes to high and half cover, high cover grants 60% evasion with 10% accuracy, and low cover is 40% evasion with 10% extra accuracy. Thankfully, one thing the tutorial does hammer home is that the cover will only provide those bonuses when being attacked from that direction. So if you're flanked, all that evasion goes away. Whereas if you're crouched or defending, you're evading from any direction. So there is a use for both, but by nature, cover will grant more evasion. There are some pretty major differences between ballistic weaponry and elemental weaponry in Wasteland 3. And rather than going down the list of what does what against whom, I'll instead try to translate what the interface is trying to tell. It's inevitable that resistances and armor will go up over time for both your team and the enemies. And when wielding certain weaponry, you'll see various icons next to an enemy's health bar during combat, showing a symbol and a number. The shield icon relates to everything physical oriented, and the shattered shield tells that your weapon penetration surpasses their defenses. After a while, the ballistic side wasn't too hard to understand, but then once elements started coming into the mix, then I started getting a little iffy. And I feel kind of stupid because of how long it took me to realize what the elemental indicator was actually saying. All these elemental symbols and numbers show is whether or not there's a bonus or a penalty to the damage you're dealing to that target. For instance, if you have a frost weapon you're using against human targets, you'll likely see a plus 30% with a snowflake icon behind it, showing both the type of damage you'll be dealing and the bonus you're getting against them. The reverse can also happen when it comes to resisting something. Say if there's a negative percentage with a lightning symbol, that means your energy attack will do a reduced amount. I hope I wasn't the only one who was a little confused by this, otherwise I'm just saying stuff that doesn't matter. In the previous tips and tricks video for this, I said that I believe there is one of each type of skill book, and I still consider that to be partially accurate because there should be at least one of each, and I still stand by the act of saving those skill books until later on in your skill development. But what I did find out almost immediately after the video was published was that you can get duplicates of some of these skill books. And the most that I found were through hidden structure encounters out in the Colorado map while driving around in the Kodiak. I did take note of a couple of vendors that sold skill books too, and Ananda, who you can convince to move to Ranger HQ from the bazaar, at about midpoint through the game, he had a second skill book after I had already bought the first one from him. There's one thing that seemed really gimmicky when I first started playing the game, but it turned out to be an amazing resource, and that is snowballs. There's several snow piles around Colorado Springs that you can gather snowballs from or make yellow, and then gather yellow snowballs from. The yellow snowballs have a variety of status ailments that can be caused when they're thrown, but the regular snowballs, when thrown at someone, cause the frozen status. This will put out the flames if your teammate is on fire, though recommended outside of combat, because what frozen also does is reduce the amount of AP the target has by 2. And the best part about snowballs, unlike throwing, say, a grenade, is it costs 2 AP to throw instead of 3. And you can gather as many of these snowballs as you want, it seems. So opening with a barrage of snowballs in a fight will give Team November a huge advantage. The Kodiak can save your squad's life in combat encounters, or just help ensure victory faster. When you start getting weapon and armor upgrades for your vehicle, be sure you're going back to the garage at HQ regularly to update its loadout. If that is your intent too, and you're currently driving around in Colorado, you can quickly travel back to Ranger HQ by using the radio and asking for a tow. It costs you nothing and pops you right outside Colorado Springs without a loading screen. After you finish up combat encounters on the world map, looting enemies and healing your team are usually the next step. What I didn't realize and didn't expect at all much later is that there were large containers full of supplies on nearly every encounter map. So check for these containers before you hop back into the Kodiak. On the topic of containers, locked or otherwise, looting with a character that has high luck adds a chance for bonus scrap and or money, and there's nothing wrong with more stuff. So what I recommend when creating a character is whomever is the lockpick specialist, boost their luck a bit too, because they automatically open the containers they lockpick anyway. Going over a previous topic in a little more detail, because we can recruit rangers at HQ whenever we want and scale them to our level, you can create a specialist that's just about weapon and armor modding and swap them in whenever you want to perform upgrades. The same can be done with a barter character too, because you'll eventually have merchants at HQ that you can just sell stuff to there. Even if you make this upgrade or barter character right after you find your Ranger HQ, they will still scale to your party's level when you pop them back into the group, or at least they should. Even if you have surpassed some obstacle that requires a skill check, if there are other things you can use those skills on, like generators, disarming explosives and traps, or locked containers or doors, do so because it will still grant experience. And several times while playing through the game, it has leveled up my characters. So the next time you're getting past something with a specific skill, check if you can use any of your other ones for more experience. I want to go over a little bit of the mechanic skill. There's other skills that benefit from deployables, but it's mostly the mechanic skill. And man, do these things help even the playing field. If you have saw pups that you can throw out, they work great when thrown at snipers, because whether the game spells it out or not, snipers lose accuracy when the enemy is in their face. So it will force them to attack or move away from that saw pup, and the attack has a higher chance of missing. Decoys can do a good job at attracting melee enemies, causing them to group up and make a great opportunity for a explosive or Molotov or shotgun blast. A word of warning though on deployable turrets, mainly energy turrets. Check the facing with them and ensure that you're not between them and their target, because the turrets can deal friendly fire too. The strike meter and strike attacks are your special moves that generate over time from combat encounters. I'm sure you know that part. I found strikes to be best when saved for foes that have lots of armor or a weak point that can be exploited. Flamethrower type enemies that have tanks on their back can be instantly killed and cause an explosion if the extra effect from your strike goes off when you hit them. Melee users get an area of effect stun attack, which is amazing crowd control. Heavily armored foes, like bosses, are usually the most threatening anyway, so the rifle, sniper, or handgun user can attack their torso or torso equivalent to shred their armor before the rest of your crew moves in. It's kind of interesting that the second Wasteland game had a huge reliance on first aid and surgeon skills, while in Wasteland 3, I think your team can actually manage without, because the important stuff that gets rid of ailments and med hypos don't require any first aid skill. I'm not trying to downplay the first aid skill though. It is still very useful because you can heal your team a lot more with med kits and at long range once you start using med darts. Injury kits, antidotes, and crystal clear do not require any first aid skill to use, and are way faster to use once you're out of combat in the item menu. So if you've been through a tough fight and squad mates have multiple injuries, debuffs, etc., you can remove those statuses much more quickly from the menu rather than asking your medic to do all the work. Obviously, med hypos don't require first aid skill either. If you have some tips and tricks you want to share and have learned through playing Wasteland 3, please do add that to the comments below. I'm all about helping people out, and I wish for the community to perpetuate that. If you found this tips and tricks useful, entertaining, or both, please do whatever it is you see fit to show that. And among the things you can do is by supporting the channel on Patreon via patreon.com/KatoGenesis. If you go the extra mile for the channel this way, that will make a spot for your name in the end video credits and give you access to the monthly updates where I share my face and an embarrassing story each month. Speaking of patrons, thanks to those who support me on screen, and Wasteland Legends Fen, thank you so much for watching. I'm KatoGenesis, and may you wander the wasteland like you own it.